Hello everyone and welcome to RPGs with Paddy. I'm Paddy. So today we're going to be continuing our series for new Gamemaster Month, and we will start off with, or we will go to the start of week 2 here. So if you're not following this, the link is in the description below if you want to try running a game in a new system for the first time. Check it out. So here we are, and in week 2, there's not so much general information, and we'll get into the specifics. But the great thing that they're saying here is that the preparation you do for your chosen game now will help you not only with that game, but you will learn transferable skills to a wide variety of other RPGs, which will help you feel confident trying out new systems. So what are the most important things? So the two things I say here are a strong enough foundation in your rules and setting so that you don't slow down the game recalling or looking up key information, and confidence in that foundation. You don't need an encyclopedic knowledge of every facet of the rules or game universe. So what they're saying here is if you have a feeling for the flow of a game and you generally understand the rules, when something unknown comes up, they want to instill in all of us the confidence to make a decision to keep the game flowing, basically. You don't have to know every single rule, but you have to have an idea for the game system so that you can make a quick ruling rather than slowing down the game. So by doing some good prep, especially at the start when you're learning a new system, you will get a feel for the flow of the game, and you'll be able to judge when it's right to slow the game down to confirm a ruling, or use a temporary ruling to keep the game going smoothly. And it's almost always the latter. Use your judgment to keep the game running relatively smoothly, and don't worry if you end up making some mistakes. You're the game master and you're in control of how the game goes. Okay, so when it comes to Trail of Cthulhu, there are 3 sections that we're going to be reading today, and they will give us the core rules of this relatively rules-light system. So first we're going to look at clues, tests, and contests, so page 51 to 58. Then we'll look at the various abilities, page 28 to 48. And then finally, we'll just look at the page on ghouls at the back of the book. So let's get into it. So now we're going to look at maybe the core rules that govern Trail of Cthulhu. Basically, when the keeper is creating their own adventure or when they read an adventure, the skeletal structure of the adventure will already be there, and then it will be brought to life through the playing. The story will go from scene to scene, and the first scene presents the mystery, usually, and then you go about solving it in subsequent scenes, gathering clues. So the player characters will gather information to tell them more about the case, and each scene must contain information pointing to a new scene and painting the horror bit by bit. So this is a core concept of Trail of Cthulhu, that every scene will lead to another scene. Or at least maybe not immediately directly, but it will have something that will move the story along. The solution to the mystery usually leads to a confrontation with some kind of monstrous evil. And so now we get to the crux of the gumshoe system. So it says in fictional mystery, the emphasis isn't on finding the clues, but the action begins once you gather the clues. And they've made a pop-out quote here, which I think is very important. It really illustrates the whole idea of this, which is investigative scenarios are not about finding clues. They are about interpreting the clues you do find. So gathering clues is done in 3 steps. 1, get your investigator into a scene where relevant information can be gathered. 2, have the right ability to discover the clue. And 3, tell the keeper that you're using it. Now, personally, and looking at some of these examples here, I don't think that players should actually state what skill they're using. They should describe their actions, and the GM will tell them what is appropriate. Actually, on page 235, I think, it's actually not 235. It's whatever page this is. In the PDF, it's 235. There is this nice investigative matrix which lets you keep track of what skills everyone has. And I think that describing actions, if the players describe what actions their character is taking, I think this is much better than if the players say the skill that they want to use. For example, the example that they give you here, I use art history to see if it's authentic late Minoan. I would prefer if they would just say, I want to see, I try to identify if it's authentically late Minoan. I think if you don't talk about the mechanics, you can get more immersed in the scenario. If you're talking about mechanics more and more, it really frames it as more of a game, and it takes you out of the immersion. And the immersion is very important for a horror game. So some clues, if they could normally be found by a layperson, do not need any specialist skill. The player just needs to say that they're looking for it. Is there anything in the cupboard? I search under the bed, something like that. For each scene, the keeper will designate a core clue. Even if the investigator does not request a clue, the keeper will let any person with a suitable ability know that the clue is available. So sometimes you can spend extra points to get extra information or some extra benefit. This is called a spend. You will be using points from the appropriate skill. That's what the points are there for. Basically, you don't need to roll for these clues. So the number of points in your skill pool is not so important. But you can use those points to spend to get extra information or an extra benefit. And the keeper can suggest to you, do you want to make a spend for X points, usually 1 or 2. For the first few scenarios, the keeper should suggest it to the players, but after that, the players should ask if spends are available, if they can get some extra information or some extra benefit from this revelation. Also, if players have a creative way that they think spend should work, they should suggest it to the keeper, and the keeper may allow it depending on the situation, as long as it's not breaking the scenario. It allows the players to get to take part more in the role playing and creating the world. But if it's breaking the adventure, then obviously it would be a no. Or if it's, overpowered. Spends are not essential to solving the case. What they do is they add a little bit more flavor to the story, often tying the investigator's drive or adding an extra dimension to the story. And they say here, I just picked out a quote, spending points on benefits encourages the keeper to wire your investigator ever more deeply into the story and into her world, putting subtle psychological pressure on her to keep your investigators alive. So the next point is figuring out who is going to find the clues. Often it will be obvious. If someone is looking for it, or if someone has the right skill, then that's the person who finds it. But sometimes it could be multiple characters. So in that case, choose the one with the highest current pool of points in that ability. Or you could pick someone who needs a win. Maybe they've been failing a lot or getting hurt a lot or something like that throughout the course of this game. And allowing them to find the clue can make them feel a little bit more like they're contributing as well. And it can be a tough game, so just make sure that everyone has some positive experiences every now and again. So there is a great page, I'll just scroll back up here, which gives a big long list of sample benefits there. And it's great for a keeper to read through this for inspiration, and feel free to either take directly from this or to create your own benefits. Never feel bad about using something straight from the book, especially at the start when you're learning. That's what it's there for. So in everything we've mentioned so far, no dice will ever be rolled. However, When we move on to tests, that's when the dice come out. So the keeper should only call for rolls at dramatically important points in the story. You don't want to be like constantly rolling where if they fail or succeed, it doesn't really impact the story, or it's not dramatic, it's just an inconvenience. Only bring the dice out for those dramatically important moments. And so there are two types of tests. There's simple tests and contests. Simple tests are seeing if an investigator can do something such as driving off-road, climbing a wall, or something like that, where they're not in a contest about it. They're just trying to do something difficult. So the keeper will decide on the difficulty level, usually from 2 to 8. The player will roll a d6, so a 6-sided die, and if it's equal to the difficulty number or higher, they succeed. Before rolling, not after rolling, only before rolling, the player can spend any number of points from the relevant ability. These points are then added to the result of their die roll. If players forget to mention that they are using points before they roll, then they automatically aren't using points. But I would say be lenient on them in the first game or two. In general, you do want to create this sense of dread and where you have to really keep your wits about you. But just when people are learning the rules, I would say be lenient on that. So in the purest game, which is grim and difficult and a little bit depressing as well, the keeper never reveals the difficulty to the players. The players have to guess what they think the difficulty is. In the pulp version, however, the keeper may reveal the difficulty numbers to the player. Although it says here, sense trouble. That number is never revealed. That difficulty number is never revealed because it would give away too much. If you fail, you fail. You can only try again if you can explain what you are doing differently this time and spend more pool points than you did in your original attempt. So let's look at an example here. So Josh wants to climb a high wall, and the keeper secretly sets the difficulty at 3 because she wants the players to succeed. Josh has 8 points in athletics and decides to spend 4 of them on the attempt. He then rolls a 5, giving him a result of 9. 5 from the dice and 4 from the pool points that he spent from athletics. And obviously 9 is much higher than the 3 that was required. Had Josh known about the score, the target score being only 3, he would have only spent 2 points, which would have guaranteed success. But because he didn't know, he had to use more points than optimal. This also prevents players gaming the system, and it starts depleting your players' resources, creating a sense of dread. So if everyone has to do a task together, they will choose one person to take the lead. That person will make a simple test as normal, and all other players will be piggybacking on the success of that one player. So all the other players must pay 1 point from the pool, from their own pool for that stat, for that skill, but these do not help the roll. These are just saying, I want to piggyback on your success, I will pay 1 point. No extra benefit, just that I will succeed if you succeed. The person who is taking the lead, they can spend points as normal to increase the roll. But everyone else is just paying 1 to be brought along with the success. Anyone who can't pay this, if they don't have any points, that will cause the difficulty number to increase by 2, which is significant. Similarly, multiple players can cooperate on a single goal. So they decide who, so for example, piggybacking might be sneaking in somewhere where everyone is kind of sneaking in, but one person is kind of taking the lead and showing them how it's done. Whereas cooperating on a single task might be one person is cracking the lock on a safe and another person is cooperating by holding the torch or something like that. So when you are cooperating, The players have to decide who is the leader and who is assisting. The leader will spend any points they want as normal for the role, and the assistant can add any number of points, but one of them is always lost. Like one single point from the assistant. So, for example, if Jeff is the leader and Anna is assisting, Jeff spends 3 points, giving a +3 to the roll, and Anna spends 5 points, but one is lost because she's the assistant, giving only a +4. So in general, they have a +7, so they'll be fine. So that is simple tests. Next, we'll move on to the next major category, contests. So this is where this is where there are two characters competing for something or challenging each other for something. So each participant will act in turn, and the first person to fail will lose. So the keeper chooses who goes first, but if it's a chase, the person who is running away goes first. If it's unclear who should go first, the person with the lowest relevant rating will go first. And the first character to act makes a roll. If they fail, they lose the contest, and the other person by default wins it. If the first person succeeds, however, then the next character will make a roll. And this keeps going until someone fails, thereby making the other person the winner. So it's a big advantage to go last here. Generally, in these contests, the difficulty should be set at 4. So you have to roll a 4 or higher. And of course, you can use points as you wish. But obviously, if you use points in your first roll, then those points won't be available for your second roll. So if you have 8 points in athletics for your first roll and you're running away, if you use 3 points and then you succeed, the next time you will only have 5 points available for it. So remember that this should not generally be used for investigative skills. But if it does happen to be used for investigative skills for dramatic purposes, it should never prevent the plot moving forward. But it should have some other different negative consequences. So that's all we're going to do for now. That's as far as we'll go for this session. We'll go in and we'll look at combat a little bit more later, but it's not a huge difference anyway. The next thing up is we're going to look at the different abilities. So I won't go through all of these with you, but I do recommend just having a quick read through these. Most of them are what you would expect. They're pretty self-explanatory. And in a pre-written scenario, you will mostly be told what skill rolls are required. But players always come up with unique ideas, so it's good to have a vague idea what the different skills are. So for example, we'll just look at one quickly. So art technical. You can create some sort of art, music, painting, dance, sculpture, song, poetry, drama, and so forth. You can choose to focus on one medium or diversify. For each rating point in art, you may select another type of art in which you are generally proficient. You may specify when you create your investigator or choose opportunistically in the course of play, revealing that you happen to be, say, a fine amateur contralto if circumstances suddenly require it. Creating great or even particularly notable art requires spends. Points allocated to such spends cannot be allocated to different art forms in the future. So that's just a simple one there. So I would basically go through this and just have a quick read through it, get a feeling for it. Now, the last task that we have for this day's entry, Tuesday's entry, is to look at ghouls. So this is a nice, simple thing about ghouls. I really like... ghouls will probably be the main mythos creature that we encounter in the scenario that we'll be running, Midnight Sub Rosa. So there is a great description here, which, really could be used very effectively in game. Rubbery, loathsome humanoids with hoof-like feet, canine features and claws. Ghouls speak in gibberings and meepings. Some recall human tongues. They are often encrusted with grave mold collected as they feed. These horrible creatures dwell in graveyard warrens, subway tunnels, and the like beneath many human cities. They have ties to witches and occasionally attack humans. A human of particularly thanatophic tendencies can transform into a ghoul over a prolonged period of time. Ghouls can engage in 2 claw attacks and a bite against the same target in 1 round. So they will be doing quite a lot of damage. And then we get just some statistics for them. And some of this, we haven't learnt the combat mechanics just yet, so I won't go through it in too much detail. But this is basically their game statistics. The next thing, however, though, the last part that they give them here, is the investigation. So if the players are doing some investigation, then they might be able to get, this is some of the suggested information they might be able to find. So for example, if they're doing an investigative search with evidence collection, they might find something like the newly dug grave over in the next plot has a marker on it labeled 1919. So that's, yeah, we're in the 30s already, so it's already been over a decade, but it still looks newly dug. On another one, languages, if they did a language check, that gravedigger we talked to used vocabulary and sentence construction more common 200 years ago. So that's all the information that we have to review for today's session of Trail of Cthulhu. I think it's really interesting, and it's a nice straightforward system as well. Once you get used to it, you and your players should be running it very, very smoothly as well. If you have any questions about it, of course, please feel free to let me know below. Otherwise, please drop a like and maybe subscribe to the channel. And I will see you in our next video, which will be on Thursday. Possibly it'll come out on Friday, where we look at the next stage here. All right, so that's it for tonight. Thank you, everyone. See you.